This is the 5-Minute Podcast Review for Friday, April 14, 2017. For many people, it's the start of the Easter break, so that could mean a bit of downtime or maybe a long drive or flight, so it could be a good time to binge on a few podcasts or check out a few potential new ones for the playlist. So I've got a couple coming up that are short enough to binge on all the episodes across a day or two, and some others that might be worth subscribing to or just dipping into the episode lists and picking off the episodes that catch your interest. Anyhow, let's jump into it. The first podcast is We Fact Up. So this was just nominated as a finalist in the comedy and entertainment category at the recent Australian Podcast Awards. And in each episode of We Fact Up, the three hosts, and sometimes a guest host, grapple with a listener question and try and work out the answer without referring to the internet, although they sometimes do phone a friend. Generally, the questions are almost incidental and just serve as a catalyst for around 30 minutes of banter, though usually an answer is reached by the end of the episode. Scrolling down the episode list, you can see questions like, why is popcorn the default movie food? Where did the term done and dusted originate? Who invented the high five? Or why do men and women's shirts button up on different sides? So it's that kind of thing, trivial questions, but often with just enough intrigue to get you in, like, why is popcorn the default movie food? And you'll have to listen to that episode to find out. Anyhow, I definitely say We Fact Up is worth checking out, and you can do this easily using the link right on your screen. Next podcast is Say Why to Drugs. So, have you ever wondered what it'd be like to try cocaine? Maybe you already know. Or what about ecstasy, or cannabis, or heroin, or amphetamines, or maybe amyl nitrate? Each episode of Say Why to Drugs takes a no-spin and no-judgment look at a different recreational drug. What it's like to take it, how you take it, what the effects are, good and bad, and even a bit of myth-busting around each drug. The episodes are hosted by Dr. Susie Gage, a psychologist, and Scroobius Pip, who is an English rapper. There's a bit of yin and yang there, with the psychologist providing some of the more technical information and the rapper providing the real-life experience of seemingly having taken most of the drugs. It makes for an interesting, often entertaining banter while also being really informative. So here's just a small clip from the episode on psychedelics to give you a feel.
Well, so would you like to tell me what you think the appeal of psychedelics is?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I started, and again, I'll be honest, of all the drugs I've done, my favourite have been hallucinogenics. And for me, it's a really interesting one because as a youngster, when you start off, it's because of the culture around it, reading Timothy Leary and listening to The Doors and things like this. Yeah. But the first few times I did it, the focus was on, and this is completely wrong, freaking out my mates and all of us going, oh, look how messed up we are. And the more I did it, the more it became, as we referenced in the previous ones, kind of a spiritual type thing. In a way, I'm not a spiritual person, but in that kind of, right, let's see what parts of my brain I can activate and experience and see how that changes me as a person, essentially, like long-term and things I realise or open up to. So, yeah.
I think what you're saying is really interesting here because it seems quite different to all of the other substances that we've talked about so far, in that they tend to be more of a kind of social thing, perhaps not tobacco, but certainly alcohol, certainly things like MDMA.
They're all about out drug.
Yeah, whereas psychedelics seem to be a much more kind of personal experience kind of a drug.
I totally agree. I got, and again, I only did them for a certain amount of time, but I got a lot more out of them personally. And again, this podcast isn't pro or anti, but I got more out of them when I realised exactly that it's not about...
Okay, that's Say Why to Drugs. Definitely something different and a podcast to check out. And as always, you can use the link on your screen. On to podcast number 3, which is Hacked. And the quick description is probably to say that hacked is to computer hacking what Say Why to Drugs is to drugs. That is, each episode takes a focused look at a different form of hacking, what it is, how it's done, and how you can try and avoid it. And again, a bit like Say Why to Drugs, Hacked has a pair of yin and yang type hosts. One a self-described storyteller and communicator, the other a technologist into computer security. So host number 1, the storyteller and communicator, stands in as a bit of a proxy for the everyday computer user and keeps the episodes more entertaining and informative rather than getting too technical and geeky. But that said, it's all aimed at an intelligent, computer literate audience. Episode subjects include email spoofing, the problem with passwords, the perils of open Wi-Fi, hacking via USB sticks, all everyday forms of hacking which you've probably been exposed to even if you don't know it. Episodes come out sporadically, so currently there are only 7 episodes, with the first coming out in October 2015 and the latest at the end of November last year in 2016. Each episode is less than 30 minutes, so with just on 2.5 hours listening in total, it's definitely a series you could knock off in a binge listen over the Easter break, and a pretty efficient way to boost your knowledge on hacking. That's Hacked, and the link is on your screen. I've just discovered this next podcast and am still working my way through the episodes. It's called See Something, Say Something. So basically, it's a podcast hosted by a group of young Americans who are Muslim. And it's about busting some of the stereotypes and myths around being Muslim in the West. I guess the main form of stereotype busting is done in an overall sense, just hearing a lot of typical banter that you expect from many panel-based podcasts, although definitely specific topics are tackled across the episodes. And generally it's done with a cheeky sense of humour and irony. The podcast title, See Something, Say Something, is of course a very in-your-face reference to the US Homeland Security slogan, which for many people is taken as a direct nod to the idea that all Muslims should be treated with suspicion. So a theme I've picked up on across the episodes I've heard so far is the frustration many ordinary American Muslims feel that they are somehow assumed to represent or speak for all Muslims when that's just not the case. If you're a younger Muslim, you might relate to the show and enjoy it, but no doubt the larger audience is intended to be non-Muslim. I heard a comment in one of the episodes along the lines that a big problem is many Westerners simply don't know any Muslims. In the US, for example, Muslims make up just 2% of the population, and the comment was made that for many Westerners, the only Muslims they do see are those on the TV news, which is often not great news and certainly not representative. So, See Something, Say Something is worth checking out, particularly if you're a Westerner, as I am, who doesn't really know too many or maybe any Muslims. I think it's a really good example of what podcasting can do better than any other media. Okay, final podcast for this episode, and definitely the most binge-worthy over Easter, is S-Town. Now, you've almost certainly heard of S-Town by now, and I suppose there's a fair chance you've already listened to it, but if not, stop what you're doing, hit the link on your screen, and download it now. I've listened to it, all of it, and yep, I'm recommending it. It's different. It's not Serial Season 1, even if it sounds like it's heading in that direction for most of the first episode. If I'd read an overview of S-Town on paper, I mightn't have thought it was worth the time to listen to, but I would have been wrong. As it happened, I didn't read any spoilers or anything much about S-Town at all, and just allowed myself to be taken along for the ride. So I'm not going to give any spoilers here or over-talk it, but just saying S-Town is worth the investment of time. It's different, it'll pull you in, and the link is on your screen. Well, that's it. 5 podcasts, including a couple to binge on, and I'll be back with 5 more in the next episode. So at the moment, I'm doing an episode every 2 weeks. That feels like the right amount of time for me to actually listen to multiple episodes of the podcasts I'm talking about. I'd love to hear from you with any interesting podcasts you've discovered. And in fact, if you've got a list of 5 podcasts to run through, let me know, and maybe we can set up an interview which could become a future episode. You'll find my email address on your screen along with the links to the podcast I've mentioned in this episode. Anyhow, that's it for now. Hope you got something out of this episode. See you next time. Thanks for listening.